Appellate Court judicial elections. I am Deborah Gross, CEO of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. I first want to thank the tremendous co-sponsors who helped us get the word out about this event. Allegheny County Bar Association, Allegheny County Law Library, Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Committee of 70, Dauphin County Bar Association, the Elevation Project, Free Library of Philadelphia, League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, League of Women Voters of Pittsburgh, Montgomery County Bar Association, Pennsylvania Bar Association, and Philadelphia Bar Association. This forum is part of Every Vote, Every Voice, a collaborative project managed by the Lenfest Institute for Journalism. We will have a recording of this program available on our website and YouTube channel, and I believe PCN will also be airing this. PMC is a nonprofit dedicated to ensuring a Pennsylvania judicial system which provides impartiality, fairness, accessibility, and respect. We have advocated for judicial reforms that promote the rule of law, access to justice, and a diverse, qualified, and independent judiciary. We provide numerous educational programs about the Pennsylvania court systems, the judiciary, and the law to all Pennsylvanians. If you would like to help us or would like us to present to your group or organization, please reach out to me. The primary elections are May 16th, and I know that those of you on this program will vote, but please make sure 5 other people you know come out to vote. Historically in Pennsylvania, less than 30% of voters vote in odd-numbered years, which means that the minority is making a decision for the majority. And the percent goes down when the ballot has a lot of different positions that are contested. Judges make important decisions that impact your lives, and state court judges have greater impact on your lives than the U.S. Supreme Court justices, who seem to be making the headlines recently. You can find more about the courts for which the candidates are running and the candidates themselves on our website, www.pmconline.org. We have received many questions from you, and I thank you for that. As a result, and because of the limited time we have for the 12 candidates, we will not be taking any Q&A. I also want to explain that many of the questions sent to us were issue questions, asking the judges their opinion on specific issues. However, under the Pennsylvania's Code of Judicial Conduct, judicial candidates cannot make pledges, promises, or commitments on specific issues or in cases that could appear in front of them. That's to protect the impartiality of judges and to provide us confidence that the judges will make decisions based on the facts and the law before them. As I mentioned, we are on a tight time frame, so this will be like speed dating. The candidates will be given 1 minute to answer each question, and you may see me holding up colored placards to give the candidates notice of how many seconds are left. I will now pass the baton to Bob Heim, Chair of PMC's Board of Directors, the former Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association, and a prominent attorney who has argued many cases in each of Pennsylvania's appellate courts, and let me say kindly, at least many dozens of times. Thank you, Bob.
All right, thanks, Debbie, and what an opportunity this is for me, because all of you have been asking me questions for a long, long time, and now turn around, I get to ask you questions, so this is quite an opportunity. And by way of an apology to everyone, Debbie used the term speed dating, and it's unfortunate that we have so many judges and would-be judges who would like to answer questions and have more of an opportunity than 1 minute to answer them. But that's what we're stuck with. We only have 90 minutes, and in the fall, when we do this after the primary is over and we have fewer candidates, we're going to separate out these courts so that we'll have a separate one for the Supreme Court, a separate one for the Superior and Commonwealth Court. So again, an apology, but this is the best we can do for now. We got an incredible number of questions, and we're just picking among the questions and throwing them at you. So let's start with each of the we'll do the Supreme Court first. And let's start with a 1-minute presentation, if that's what I can call it, by each of the Supreme Court candidates to say what they want to the many, many citizens of Pennsylvania who have gotten on this webinar and want to know you and hear from you. So let me just do, I don't know how I'm going to work this eventually, but we can start with alphabetical order, and that would mean you, Judge Carluccio.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. And thank you to the Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts and all the sponsors, in particular my home, Montgomery County Bar Association. Very quickly, I'm the endorsed candidate for my party. I've been highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. I'm the sitting president judge of the third largest and busiest court in this Commonwealth. And I was elected by a bench of 24 judges that are both Republicans and Democrats. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I was the first woman chief public defender in my county. I was a chief deputy solicitor. My entire career has been in public service. My father is first-generation Italian. My mother is a very proud Irish woman, and together they raised us in a very loving but firm household. And that's how my husband and I raised our 3 boys. I hope to bring balance to the court, being the sole suburban voice on that court, and also being the only president judge of a common pleas court on the bench. Thank you.
Good job. 1 minute. Okay, let's have out Judge Kunselman.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm Judge Debbie Kunselman, and I'm also a candidate for the Supreme Court. And like Carolyn, I'm also highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. By way of background, I'm a graduate of Penn State University and the University of Notre Dame Law School, and I graduated with honors from both of those universities. I practiced law for 13 years, and in 2005, I was the first woman ever elected to the Court of Common Pleas in Beaver County. And I presided there for 12 years, where I was administrative judge for family law, juvenile law, and civil law. I also presided over criminal jury trials. In 2017, I was elected to the Superior Court, where I've decided over 3,000 appeals. I'm the candidate that has significant experience both at the trial court and at the appellate court. And I'm a mother of 3 and happily married for 29 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Judge McCaffery.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you? I am
fine.
Judge Dan McCaffery of the Pennsylvania Superior Court. By way of background, I'll just give you my thumbnail sketch. I am born and raised in the city of Philadelphia. I'm the youngest of 7, born to an Irish Catholic immigrant family from Belfast, Northern Ireland, who came to this country to escape religious persecution and to enjoy the free exercise of American freedoms. At the age of 18, I joined the United States Army, served proudly with the 1st Cavalry Division. I was one of 40 soldiers worldwide to be selected to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. I was honorably discharged, attended Temple University and Temple University School of Law on a veteran scholarship. In 1991, I accepted a position with the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, where I was a prosecutor assigned to the Major Trials Unit, trying literally thousands of cases, over 50 or 60 jury trials. In 1997, I joined a small firm in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and we became one of the fastest growing law firms in Pennsylvania. I was the chair of the firm's litigation department. 2013, I ran for the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. I was highly recommended by the bar. I am the endorsed Democrat for Pennsylvania Supreme Court, having been highly recommended by the bar and endorsed by the party.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Judge McCullough.
Thank you so much. I'm Judge Patricia McCullough. I'm running because we're facing a constitutional crisis. I'm the only candidate on this ticket running for the highest appellate court who is judge for over 12 years, handling complex matters and upholding the constitutional rights of the people. The Constitution is written in election integrity, congressional redistricting, Second Amendment, COVID restrictions. I also served as a trial court judge when I was appointed by the governor to Allegheny County. I have 25 years as an attorney practicing in private, corporate, and government sectors. I did not take the 2005 pay raise. I gave back $10,000 to the state treasury for that pay raise. I don't take money from lawyers and lobbyists when I run. I want people to know it's the Constitution and law and the people seeking justice. I'm hoping the people will vote like their future depends on it because it absolutely does. And I'm asking for their support to continue upholding the Constitution in the PA Supreme Court. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, all four of you. So let me move on to picking from among the questions. I think the question we got most was, what do you think is the most important quality for a justice of the Supreme Court to have? What should voters be looking for in a justice of the Supreme Court? And we can perhaps go in reverse order, so that would put you up again, Judge McCullough.
You're muted. Wait. Judge McCullough, you're muted. Oh, tell her she's muted.
You're muted, Judge McCullough.
Is it now? Because I unmuted it before. Is it open? I didn't remute it. Okay.
You're good. You're
Let me
good
start
now.
again. All right. Okay, thank you. I think the most important thing for electing a justice to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is someone who has the experience to do it. As I said, I have 12 plus years as an appellate court judge and a trial court judge, upholding the constitutional rights of the people as written. We need someone who can hit the ground running on day one in the Supreme Court, because as I said, we are facing a constitutional crisis. We need someone who's fair, impartial. I have been. I don't take money from lawyers and lobbyists, and I have upheld the Constitution no matter what, in all the cases for the people. It's a government of the people. We have to remember that as well. And I think it's important to demonstrate that we have the qualities to be a Supreme Court justice by conducting ourselves in the campaign in a proper manner and not engaging in false and malicious political attack ads. Thank you. I see my time is up.
Thank you. Judge McCaffery?
I think to echo what Judge Kunselman said, I think it's experience, independence, and integrity. Ever since I was 18, I've taken an oath every single venture of my life, whether it's been a soldier, been a prosecutor, been an attorney, a trial judge, or an appellate court judge, to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. We need judges who have the experience to sit on that court. I've got over 32 years of combined legal and judicial experience. In addition to that, I've served my country in the military. I've literally had my commitment to support, defend, and obey the Constitution at every single turn of my career. I was appointed by the Pennsylvania Superior Court President Judge as a supervisor on the Superior Court and supervising all wiretaps. And in 2020, I was selected by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to sit on the Court of Judicial Discipline. So one of my jobs, in addition to the Superior Court Judge job, is to be the arbiter of all judicial misconduct cases in Pennsylvania. I think that shows independence. I think it shows integrity and trust that the Supreme Court has entrusted in me to perform the job with integrity and with ethics.
Thank you. Judge Kunselman?
Thank you. Yes, I think that the most important quality that the voters should be looking for in electing a Supreme Court justice is someone who has a broad knowledge of the law. Our Supreme Court is going to be making decisions that will set precedent for the entire state. And I bring a very diverse background in that I have practiced family law, municipal law, employment, and personal injury. I also served 8 years as the Chief County Solicitor. Chief Justice Roberts once said that a good judge should be a generalist and be familiar with all areas of the law. And then the lawyers come in and do the deep dive to educate the judge so that they can make the proper decision and apply the law fairly. I think when you're on the Supreme Court, you have to look at the history of the laws and how we got to where we are. And I also think you need to be able to collaborate with your colleagues so that you get a strong majority opinion, so that the lower courts, the litigants, the lawyers all understand what the law is, especially when you're interpreting a statute. So that's what I think is most important when electing a Supreme Court justice.
Thank you. And Judge Carluccio?
Thank you. I think our citizens want judges who understand them, who will listen to them and treat them with respect and fairness. And they want their judges to be of the highest integrity. It's beyond dispute we all have the experience. I've got more than 38 years as a judge and a lawyer, but it's the impact of that experience on me that makes me qualify for this position. As a federal prosecutor, I've personally put high-level criminals behind bars. As a chief public defender, I've sought to uphold the rights of those who are wrongly accused. And as a judge, I've looked in the eye of a child and talked to them about the pain of a drug-addicted parent and the heartache of a parent who doesn't want them. I've seen the results of people losing their property and their jobs. This is what the people of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania want, people that understand them and will listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. And for all of the judges, Debbie is holding up signs for me to see, but I'm not sure you can see them. But if I go like this, that means your time is up. So, but I think you've all been pretty good. You've all been very cooperative. So thank you. All right. The next question that we have is, and this is another question that we've gotten a lot from the citizens, and it essentially says, tell me why you're a better candidate than the other candidates. You're all judges, but what distinguishes you from the other people who are running so that I should vote for you? And why don't we go in a different order here? I'm just going to make this up. Judge Kunselman.
Hi, yes. So, three of us are highly recommended. And so how do you choose? I'm the candidate that brings the most years of judicial experience, both at the trial court with 12 years and at the appellate court 6 years. So this is my 6th year. This is my 18th year as a judge. And I think the diversity of my background also makes me uniquely qualified because I've been in the trenches with the families going through these difficult family law cases, juvenile cases, and juvenile delinquency and dependency with those parents. I have the government experience coming from the county solicitor's office because the Supreme Court hears cases from both the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court. So I think I just bring that depth and breadth of experience that make me uniquely qualified for this position.
Thank you. Judge McCaffery?
Yeah, Bob, I kind of agree with Judge Kunselman. I think you've got very qualified candidates here. If you want to know about our qualifications, I would refer everybody to the Pennsylvania Bar Association's exhaustive research and recommendation where we were highly recommended. But I think what sets me apart is my life experience. As I mentioned beforehand, I think I bring a very unique perspective to this particular position. As the son of immigrants, I'm the only veteran on Pennsylvania's courts, as I mentioned beforehand. I think that brings a big distinction. As a veteran, you're kind of taught from day one in the military to put yourself and your self-interests kind of secondary to the mission. And the mission of the Supreme Court, of course, is to get the job right and to make sure you make the correct decisions. As I mentioned, I am the son of immigrants. I'm currently the only veteran on Pennsylvania's appellate courts. But in addition to that, in addition to my legal experience, I've spent over 30 years as a youth sports coach in the city of Philadelphia, coaching girls basketball, high school rugby. I've been a community activist, actively working in my community and church. I've worked with drug and alcohol communities. I've worked with homeless outreach programs in the city of Philadelphia. I currently sit on the board of advisors for a local school. And I've worked in the past with Catholic Social Services for homeless outreach. So I think it's kind of the good heart portion of my qualification.
Judge McCullough?
Yeah, I'll just say first, I don't have a rating because their deadline was December 21st, and I got in this race well after that. But the most important thing I think for a Supreme Court justice candidate is that judges and candidates can't tell you how they're going to rule. We're not allowed to. But we all take an oath to uphold the Constitution. It's the most important thing we do as a judge. It's the most important thing the Supreme Court does in its role, is to uphold the constitutional rights of the people. So the people can look at my record, 12 plus years as an appellate court judge, upholding their rights in election integrity, COVID restrictions, upholding the rights of the legislature to draw the map, upholding their Second Amendment and First Amendment rights. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we have the experience to take on that role, and that the people can look at our record and know that we've already abided by our oath in those issues that impact all Pennsylvanians.
Thank you. Judge Carlucci?
Thank you. I think every candidate is qualified, but I think what you need to do is dig down a little bit deeper. I'm the only president judge from Court of Common Pleas. And why that's important is because as the president judge, my powers are to be the administrator and supervisor over all the courts in my county, which are 24 judges and 30 magisterial district judges. This is the same thing that the Supreme Court does over all the courts in our Commonwealth. And that's a large part of what they're actually doing. I've also touched on every area of the law I've either presided over or I've practiced it. I've practiced in the local, federal, and state courts. There's almost no area of the law I have not done. And I bring a lot of passion, a lot of care, a lot of empathy to the position. And I would ask that the people support me, because I've been involved in the community. I teach civics education to sixth graders for the last 10 years as a volunteer. I've brought art into our courthouse with nothing coming from the taxpayers, and I'll be the only one from the suburbs on the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, the third question, we're going to do 4 questions for Supreme Court candidates. I have to read this one. If you win the primary, you will likely want to raise money to run in the general election. How do you propose to insulate yourself on the bench from lawyers or organizations that supported your candidacy? And will you have a recusal policy? So let's go right back to you, Judge Carlucci, with that one.
Well, I think now I've been on the courts for 14 years, and anybody who had donated to my campaign, clearly I recuse myself. Judges are expected to be above reproach, and they cannot have any impropriety or the appearance of impropriety there. And I think that's a really strict rule that we need to recuse ourselves. The reality is that people want to donate to campaigns, and lawyers want to get involved. They care about who gets on their courts. And the way our Constitution is set up now, they are permitted to be a part of the system and to donate. I certainly don't have any plans to be seeking any money from anyone. We're prohibited from doing that. But in the event that they do donate, I will recuse myself.
Thank you. Judge Kunselman?
Yes. So I think, excuse me, I think I have to look at the percentage of the donation in comparison to the overall amount that you had of support. So if, for example, I did have someone ask me to recuse on a case where someone had donated, I think, $250 to my campaign. I mean, what we have to be careful of is that we don't want people to give us money so that we do end up having to recuse. So there is a very fine balance there in making sure that that we're being fair, and that the amount is not unduly setting us aside to be, so that it could be perceived as being prejudicial. So I think it just depends on the entities. A lot of times people are donating through PACs, and so we don't even have any idea of who the individual donors are when it comes through a PAC, and that's a little bit of a safety net there, because there couldn't even be an appearance of impropriety if we don't know where this is directly coming. So I will have a recusal policy, though. I will look, and obviously if it's not something that's apparent to me readily, I would hope that a party would ask me to recuse, and then I could take an independent look at it and decide.
Thank you. Judge McCaffery?
Yeah, Bob, I will also adopt a recusal policy. My recusal policy will be pretty simple and straightforward. Any actual conflict, I will recuse. Any appearance of impropriety where an attorney or a party asks me to recuse, I will take a look at the allegations of impropriety. And in order to uphold the integrity of the court and a fair and impartial decision to be made, I will recuse where necessary. As far as fundraising is concerned, I have formed a committee. I am the candidate for Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which means I have formed a committee. It is the committee's responsibility to actually raise the funds necessary to get my message about my qualifications out before the voters. I do not ask for money. I will never ask for money. I will never ask for a check. I will never talk about a check. And if anybody ever tries to hand me a check, I will hand it back. Pretty simple.
Okay, thank you. And Judge McCullough.
Yes, we already have a judicial code of conduct that governs these recusals and conflicts. We don't need to come up with another separate policy. We're bound by the judicial code of conduct if we want to put something tighter in there. But, you know, everybody talks about reform. And I think it begins first with the candidates, which is why when I first ran in 2009, I didn't take money from lawyers and lobbyists, and I don't do it now. I had to return at the end of my last campaign a $2,000 check because I found out it was from a lawyer. Just last week, I told my committee, you have to return a check that came in for $500 from a lawyer. I think it's time for one of us to take a stand for the people. And the people don't want to hear about monies from unions, monies from lawyers, monies from big law firms. And that's what I'm trying to do, is give the people a choice. They know when they come in my courtroom, it's the Constitution, the law, and the parties seeking justice. And that's why they don't have to worry about that. And if we have other type of conflicts, we're governed by the judicial code of conduct.
Thank you. All right, one final question for the four of you. You already occupy important positions as three of you as appellate judges already, and of course Judge Carluccio as a president judge. What makes you want to run for the Supreme Court? And I'll start with how about Judge McCaffery?
Oh, the short answer is I think our courts right now, Bob, have been politicized. I think the courts are really under duress, and I think we need people that the public has confidence in. I think they want people, as I mentioned at the outset, who are fair, who are impartial, and have integrity to lend their voice to the actual court itself. As I mentioned beforehand, my background's not the predictable background. I didn't come from a family of judges or a family of lawyers. My parents were immigrants. I think I bring a common sense approach. I have dedicated my life to service, starting with my country in the United States Army and my community as a prosecutor and community coach and community activist, and to my Commonwealth as a trial judge and now as an appellate court judge. I think it's the combination of life experience and judicial experience and legal experience that makes me want to run for this particular spot. I have been noted and selected by the Supreme Court as a judicial ethicist. I lecture on judicial ethics. I think it's one of those situations for me anywhere where the Supreme Court is the next logical step in my career, and I want to lend my experience to that court.
Judge Carluccio. Pardon?
So, sorry.
Carluccio. Sorry.
I don't want to leave what I'm doing now, to be honest with you. I love being president judge in my district. It's been a great place to be. I've loved every judicial job I've had, but I've been able to accomplish some pretty important things as president judge. And they're things that I hope to take with me and experience that I can take with me to the Supreme Court. As the administrative judge in the family division, I implemented something called Custody 2.0, which assured that the families and the children received a fair and expeditious hearing and resolution of their conflicts. And that's what they were really looking for, is something to go through quickly. As the president judge, I handled backlogs in the civil and criminal division that we hadn't seen in a long time because of COVID. First thing I did was open the courts up and make sure that we were able to hear our cases in a way that was fair and impartial. I also changed the way we did business in both those divisions. And I can tell you that in a little bit over a year, we're 86% caught up with our backlog in the criminal division and nearly that in our civil division. So I'm running for the Supreme Court to bring some of the experience that I've gained in this role and to bring some balance onto that court, get politics out of it. Couldn't agree more, Judge McCaffery.
Judge Kunselman.
Yes, I'm running because I was encouraged by some of my colleagues and mentors to run for this position based on my experience and the things that I've accomplished at the various levels I've been at. At every job I've had, I've been an innovator. I've looked for new ways to do things more efficiently and effectively. When I was a trial court judge, I implemented Act 53 that allowed parents of minor children to seek in-placement treatment for their addicted children. On the Superior Court, I implemented in-house CLE classes and CJE classes. I'm always looking for ways to make things more efficient. And on the Supreme Court, I'm hoping to serve in an administrative role, which is something I don't get to do much on the Superior Court. And I'd like to do things in terms of mental health reform and juvenile justice reform, in terms of making sure we have juvenile detention centers, at least regionally throughout the state. A number of them have closed. And so I am looking to serve in a more administrative role on that court, but I do love the job I have now. So.
And I think that's all four of you.
Oh, I didn't
No, you
answer
missed-
that.
Oh, Judge,
Judge
I'm
McCullough.
sorry, Judge McCullough, how could I miss you? So
Okay.
you know the question?
Yes, I know the question, and here's my answer. I love my court, but I'm running because we're in a constitutional crisis. And I think there's three things we need for someone who's going to take this position. One is the experience, been a judge, appellate court judge, going to the appellate court for over 12 years, upholding the rights, the constitutional rights of the people as written in the Constitution. A trial court judge. I have administrative experience. I chaired the Appellate Court Procedural Rules Committee. The Supreme Court appointed me, and other IOP committees and things that I've already done on our court. But the second important thing is we need somebody who has the courage and conviction to uphold the Constitution as written. I've been threatened for my opinions, and I have been subject to false and malicious political attack ads because I won't compromise to the party elite. But you know what? We have to uphold the Constitution anyway. That's what I've done in the Second Amendment and election redistricting. We have to take a stand for the people. I didn't take the pay raise. I returned $10,000. I don't take money from lawyers and lobbyists. And I put it now to the programs to help veterans, youth at risk, drug addiction, and many others to improve our courts and our system of justice. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all four candidates for the Supreme Court. It's a critically important part of our government. You know, it is, and I wish all of you the best, and thank you for coming on. If you want to stay on when we ask questions of the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court applicants, you're welcome to do that. But if you want to do something else or get ready for the Sixers game, or
We have session tomorrow. I'm going to read. I have session tomorrow. But thank you so much for doing this. I thought we were getting more questions. I was all ready to go. But thank you for the time. God bless you and your listeners. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much, all of you. Right.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks, Deborah.
Okay, so we'll now move to the Superior Court. Pardon?
Let me see.
Excuse me for a minute, because Debbie is telling me something.
Jill, so I guess why don't we go to Commonwealth and Superior? But yes, you're asking.
You want to
some
go to
questions.
Commonwealth first?
Yeah.
All right. One of our candidates for the Superior Court is late because of an unavoidable problem. So as usual, I'm corrected by Debbie. And so we'll do the Commonwealth Court first, right? Deb, that's what you want to do? Okay. So we'll go to the Commonwealth. Well, that's going to throw me off a little bit here, I think.
Well, then just start. I mean, do what's best.
Yeah, I think we're going to stay with the Superior Court because I have them in a particular order, and some of the questions that came from the public were directed to the Superior Court, and some were directed to the Commonwealth Court, so it gets a little confusing. So I think we'll go with the Superior Court. Let's start with.
And Jill is on. Jill just got on. Jill Beck is here.
Oh, good. Okay, good. We were concerned about you making it on. So
Thank you for your patience, Bob.
I know you're quite welcome. Okay, so I'll tell you what the first question is going to be. Okay. Debbie is telling me that I need to remind everybody that Superior Court and Commonwealth Court candidates that that you will have 1 minute at the outset to tell the citizens who are on here, the many citizens are on here, of why you should be elected to the Superior Court. So why don't we why don't we start with the Superior Court candidates. So I'm just going to go with, well, since you were the last to arrive, Attorney Beck, Jill Beck. Why don't you take your 1 minute?
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jill Beck from Allegheny County, running for Superior Court. I have practiced in all of the areas the Superior Court hears. I've practiced in the Superior Court itself, as well as appellate courts across the country. And I spent 10 years on the other side of the bench, clerking for a judge and justice of the Superior and Supreme Courts, 6 on the Superior Court, 4 on the Supreme, where I drafted over 500 of these very decisions. In addition to knowing the law, I also have a high level of empathy for the people who come before the court, as I've dedicated my career largely to representing vulnerable and underserved members of our population. I started my legal career representing child abuse victims. After my clerkship, I joined the law firm Blank Rome, where in addition to my commercial litigation and appellate practice, I represented victims of domestic violence, victims of racial discrimination, illegal gun sales and wage theft, members of the LGBTQ community, veterans, just generally help people without money get the same rights and protections as people who do. I'm highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association and would love to have your support as well.
Okay, thank you. I think next, Judge Dugan.
Good evening, Bob, Debbie, and citizens and those listening to this today. Thanks for being here. I am Judge Dugan. I've been on the bench for 16 years. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. It was actually a plastic spoon. Single mother of 5 raised me through her perseverance, 2 jobs. I needed to join the Army to be able to go to college and pay for it. I used my GI Bill to finish college, go to law school. My peers in 2018, 26 of my judicial peers elected me to be their president judge. The Supreme Court appointed me one of only 9 judges to be on the Judicial Ethics Board. In 2010, I started Veterans Court in Philadelphia. It's one of the nation's models. We have jurisdictions from all over the country come in and see what we do, take it back. I was a JAG officer, civil affairs, an infantry paratrooper, and I've touched almost every aspect of the law: criminal, family, civil, criminal defense. I appreciate, again, I'm Pat Dugan, and I absolutely love being a judge.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Lane.
Hi, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Timika Lane, and I've had the honor of being elected to the Court of Common Pleas a decade ago, where I've sat and tried and presided over the toughest cases. I was a supervising judge for human trafficking, but I've also done a lot of trials and juries with sexual assault victims, domestic violence, horrific child abuse cases. And I have the vast experience of decades of legal experience, trying cases, very tough cases. But before I was even a judge or an attorney, I was a public school teacher. And I think you have to look at to why I've dedicated my life to service. My dad was in the Marine Corps. He's now deceased. That's why I say was. My mother's a retired police detective, and my grandmother worked in a cafeteria. And it was always instilled in me from day one that it's not about me, but how we can be of service. And that's how I've dedicated my entire career. And the Pennsylvania Bar Association, as well as the Philadelphia Bar Association, has acknowledged that and rated me highly recommended for not only my legal temperament, my judicial writing, but also for my community involvement. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we'll now move to the first question that we have. And the question is, how would you describe yourself as a judge? Or if you're not a judge, what do you aspire to be as a judge? So why don't we start with, well, last should go first. So Judge Lane.
Sure, thank you. I really take pride in making sure that everyone who comes before me in my courtroom is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of where you're from, what zip code you are, what language you speak, or religion that you practice. I've had very tough cases in which I made sure that everyone received a fair trial, so much so that I had a very difficult trial with the Aryan Nation where they gouged out someone's eyes and left them to die. And they didn't think they would get a fair trial, but at the end, they commended me on giving them a fair trial. And that's how I prided myself, from the human trafficking victim who had to crawl and eat out of a dog bowl, and to another one who was rendered infertile after a vicious rape. My courtroom is a safe space for people to tell their truth and to what happened in their own voice. And that is what I totally pride myself in, and to make sure that everyone feels that their voice was heard.
Thank you. Judge Dugan?
Yeah, I think the judge that I am, I exude empathy, yet toughness on the bench. And I've heard that from many folks as I go around campaigning. We'll be in a ward meeting or a different community meeting, and I will talk about my background. And it seems like every place I go, somebody will raise their hand and say, "Hey, Judge, I was in front of you," whether it's a witness or a defendant. And I'm like, "Oh, there goes my endorsement from this group." And to a person, they say, "No, you treated me fairly, with respect, and I appreciated the way that you ran your courtroom." I hear that all the time. I was recently at an event with a union, and they had all these vendors outside, and it was a treatment facility. And they came and told me about a defendant who was in front of me 10 years ago, who was now part of their program. He was actually up in Alaska spreading that treatment for veterans to Anchorage, Alaska. And this was somebody who was in front of me as a defendant who's now working in that field. This is what I try to do: throw the pebble and make that go around.
Okay, and thank you very much, Judge and Attorney Beck.
I believe in a judiciary that is engaged but restrained. It is the job of the judiciary to review the laws and ensure their constitutionality and make sure that they are correctly and faithfully applied. It is for the court not to serve as a rubber stamp for any of the other branches, nor is it for the Superior Court to usurp the function of any other role in our government. We do not write the laws, but we interpret and apply and ensure the constitutionality of them. For me personally, I also will echo that I will, approach my courtroom like I've approached this campaign, with every voice being heard. I have been in all 67 counties as I have gone across the Commonwealth, and I want every person, no matter who they are, what they look like, how they pray, who they love, how much money they make, to know that they got a fair and even playing field when they come into my courtroom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I think the next question, interesting question, and the question is, do you have a judicial philosophy of some kind? And maybe you could combine that with, is there a judge or justice that helped you form your judicial philosophy, or who you would emulate? So I'll start with, let's see. Why don't I start with Judge Dugan?
My philosophy is to sit on the bench and listen to the case, listen to the evidence that's presented. I can't say that I have a philosophy. I just look at each case individually. I know it's the most important day in the events that are in front of me, so I try to make it for me as well. In terms of judges that I emulate, there's a fellow by the name of Robert Russell from Erie County, New York. And he's the gentleman who's given credit for starting Veterans Court. And I've been around him for more than a decade now. Been at seminars. We've become very good friends. I've been up and I observed him, and he just knows how to do this. He's one of the pioneers of drug treatment court, which is also something that I've been heavily involved in. And another mentor, a guy by the name of Lou Presenza from Philadelphia, who was the president judge and one of the founders of drug treatment court throughout the nation. These are two of those judges that I try to emulate.
Judge Lane?
Sure. Mine is just simple: to make sure that everyone knows in my courtroom they will receive a fair trial and that their voice will be heard, regardless of their background, who they love, what religion they practice, how much money they have, we are all the same in the eyes of the law. And as far as judges that I emulate, I've been really blessed to have a lot of mentors from when I was a young attorney, trying cases in family court and criminal matters as well as civil matters. And I got elected on the bench with a lot of my mentors, Judge Sheila Wood Skipper, Judge Heidi Fox, Barbara McDermott, you name it. I have been really embraced by the judges on my court, and I'm very lucky. But as far as other judicial role models that I have not met, of course, our Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. So I have an abundance of riches, and I should not have named any names, because if my colleagues are on here, I did not mean to leave out anybody. I'm very blessed to be a judge on the Commonwealth, the Court of Common Pleas of the First Judicial District, and they've all taken me under their wing.
And Attorney Beck?
Thank you. I think I mostly answered the judicial philosophy question with your last question of a judiciary that is engaged yet restrained. And so I will sort of rest on that. But as far as the jurist who I would most like to emulate, I would say probably Justice Kennedy. You know, he was someone who transcended partisan politics and was someone who you would not know which way he was going to come out on a case in advance of the decision, which I think was, he was a consensus builder, a tiebreaker, and that is something that, you know, I would love to be viewed as when I am on the court myself.
Okay, thank you. So we have one more question for each of you, and the question is this. What is your view of long-standing precedents? What factors would you consider in upholding or reversing precedential opinions? It's a technical question. So, Attorney Beck, you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. You know, there's a long line of precedent that talks about when you can and should overrule longstanding precedent. You know, stare decisis is one of the most important tenets in our judicial system because it gives predictability and allows people to walk into court knowing exactly what to expect. You know, such precedent should only be overruled or reconsidered when there is a big change in the law, a change in the facts and circumstances that gave rise to the passage of that law. You know, certainly you have to look at whether people have come to rely on that precedent in their daily lives and ensure that the law has been able to be applied correctly and faithfully and has been applied as such. You know, you always have to look at everything from the facts that are coming before the court. But if you're looking to overrule longstanding precedent, you have to do that with, I think, great care.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to move to the Commonwealth, or do you want to stay with Superior Court? I'm talking to Debbie, so excuse me.
Another Superior Court question.
Another Superior Court question? Okay. So you're lucky you're getting another question, or unlucky, as the case may be, whichever, however you do it. Okay. Let's see. Right, here's a good question. All of us over the years have formed political beliefs. Do you think your political beliefs will influence your judicial decisions? And do you think that's okay? So why don't I start with Judge Dugan?
No, my political feelings, my personal feelings do influence what I judge. Again, it's the most important day for litigants. It's that case that's in front of me. I have to look at it objectively. I can't let my biases and prejudice and my personal feelings come into play. So I must look at each case individually. And I believe that I do that every day that I'm on the bench. Again, I've been doing it for 16 years as a trial judge, and it's something that I take seriously. I can't allow some of those external parts of my life come into what's happening on the bench. It's the evidence that's presented. It's not the biases or political persuasions that I or somebody else may have.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Attorney Beck?
Truthfully, I think politics has no place in our judicial branch. I mean, certainly there are political decisions that should be made and must be made. But for me, and especially for the Superior Court, which is the least politically active court of all the courts, political decisions really should not come into play. Partisan politics should not come into play. We are looking at facts to law and law to facts, and it is putting together a puzzle. Personal biases aside, the judge always has to be able to apply the law as written and to interpret the law that's before them based on the Constitution, and really nothing else. That's not to say you check your common sense at the door, but really it is an unfortunate partisan run for a nonpartisan position.
And Judge Lane?
I just would like to concur with what Jill Beck said, because as a judge, we are fair and impartial arbiters of the law. It's just that we are there to look at case by case and then make a decision based on the facts before us. So I would concur with what Jill Beck said.
Thank you. That was the shortest answer. You get some kind of prize for that. I don't know. Well, thank you, all of you who are who want to be on the Superior Court. You're all wonderful, and I wish you all the best, really, and going forward. And I think we'll now move on to the Commonwealth Court,
Yes,
although Debbie is telling me.
No, I just want to make one statement, and that is that the candidate Maria Batista was going to join us, but she sent us an email right
She's
before
ill.
the program that she was sick. So I just wanted to explain that.
Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you, all of you, and we'll now move on to the Commonwealth Court. I think we're doing okay on time. So, here's the list that I have for the Commonwealth Court, and see if you're all here. I have, let's see, Attorney Martin, Attorney Neft, Attorney Prince, and Judge Wolf. Okay, so why don't we each take 1 minute for your opening statement, and since I read them in that order, I might as well proceed in that order. So Attorney Martin, why don't you go first?
Thank you very much, Bob. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be here with all of you tonight. My name is Megan Martin. I am the Republican endorsed candidate for our Commonwealth Court. I have been recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association for the Commonwealth Court. I'm an attorney from Cumberland County. I'm a wife and I'm a mom. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone who knows me knows that I believe that public service is a calling and that I have been called to serve. I love being part of something that is so much bigger than myself and doing meaningful work that impacts and improves the lives of millions of people all across our great Commonwealth. I have dedicated my nearly 30-year legal career to public service. I'm the only attorney I know who has served in all three branches of our state government. I've also had the honor of my career serving as an attorney for the United States Navy, where I was both a litigator and a transactional lawyer. I'm again answering the call to serve, this time by running for our Commonwealth Court. I'm running to make a better future for my children and my children's children, and I hope that after you learn about me tonight, you will see that I'm the best candidate for Commonwealth Court and that I can earn your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Attorney Neff?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here this evening. Thank you to Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts for sponsoring this and all of the other entities that are participating as sponsors in this event. My name is Bryan Neft, and I'm from Allegheny County, and I'm running for the open seat on the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. I live in Mount Lebanon with my wife and our rescue German Shepherd, Elsa. I have 3 kids that I've raised in Mount Lebanon as well. I've been recommended for this position by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. I've been highly recommended for the position of Commonwealth Court Judge by the Allegheny County Bar Association. I have 33 years of experience as a lawyer, first as a judicial law clerk for a Superior Court judge, and second of all, 30 years of experience as a trial lawyer. I practiced in 30 counties across Pennsylvania, as well as in all of the appellate courts, the Supreme Court, the Commonwealth Court, and the Superior Court. If the Dobbs decision out of the United States Supreme Court means anything, many of our civil rights are going to be adjudicated at the states, and I'm running to protect individual rights. Thank you.
Attorney Prince.
Hi, my name is Josh Prince, and I'm a candidate for the Commonwealth Court. I was born and raised in Berks County, Pennsylvania, and I graduated from Widener University Law School. Since graduating, I've spent my entire career defending our civil rights in the state and federal courts. While I am most well known for my Second Amendment advocacy, I've handled all forms of constitutional issues: equal protection, due process, religious freedom, freedom of speech, you name it, I've handled it. I was also at the tip of the spear fighting the COVID mandates. Many are unaware that the original COVID mandate forced the closure of all law firms, so no one could challenge those executive fiats. I was the attorney that was successful in getting law firms deemed essential and allowed to reopen. As I am the only candidate with substantial, extensive, and successful experience in front of all of the Pennsylvania appellate courts, including the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and have spent the majority of my career before the Commonwealth Court, where I still to this day hold injunctions issued against Commonwealth agencies that violated our rights, I hope I can earn your vote on Tuesday.
Thank you. Okay, so why don't we start with some of the questions. I thought one of the questions that was asked earlier was a question that might be also asked of candidates for the Commonwealth Court.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Can I do a minute introduction of myself?
Yeah. Oh, did I miss you? I'm
That's all
sorry, Judge. You know,
All right. It's getting towards the end of the program, and you know, we got to stay perky. So I am Judge Matt Wolf. I am a judge in Philadelphia. I'm the supervising civil judge. I've been a judge for 5 years and a couple months. I was elected in 2017. Prior to that, I was a civil rights attorney for 25 years. And I represented people against employers, against the police, in discrimination cases, excessive use of force, asserting individual rights against larger, more powerful entities. So I was a trial lawyer. I tried cases. I had juries that I got verdicts from, and I prosecuted appeals. All of that qualifies me for the Commonwealth judgeship. I'm also a soldier. I serve in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. I'm a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout soldier. I was previously a judge advocate, and I served in the United States Army in Iraq and Afghanistan. I practiced law in war zones. So those 3 things, I think, qualified me to be a Commonwealth judge. You can find more information about it, judgemattwolf.com.
Thank you, Judge Wolf, and my apologies for glossing over there. Okay, so I started to say there was a question that was submitted that I thought was probably from one of our lawyer viewers, but I thought it was a good question for the Commonwealth Court as well as the Superior Court. And the question had to do with the role of precedent. What is your view of the role of precedent in, as far as the Commonwealth Court is concerned? What would you consider in upholding or reversing a decision by the lower court? And why don't I start with Attorney Neft?
You know, I've been troubled over the last couple of years about cases that I've seen that have dealt with precedent and have overruled precedent without a real valid justification for doing so. Take the decision in North Carolina recently where the Supreme Court of North Carolina had ruled that the state had been gerrymandered last year, and then only to have a Republican majority come on this year and say, no, there is no gerrymandering. I think that's really fraught with a lot of problems, and I don't think courts are taking seriously the idea of what precedent really means. The idea of rule of law means following the precedent that's out there. I think we see that also coming from the United States Supreme Court with the Dobbs decision that I referred to earlier, where all of a sudden we're being told we don't have federal rights that we believed that we had for many, many years. So I think it takes a lot to overrule precedent, and I certainly would be one to take a hard look before I would do anything that would overrule a valid precedent.
Okay. Attorney Prince?
Precedent's extremely important for both litigants and attorneys to know what to expect from the judiciary. So I think only where there's a manifest injustice is it appropriate to overturn existing precedent. We saw such a situation with, as an example, the Dred Scott decision, one of the most abhorrent decisions ever rendered. And that's the type of situation where obviously precedent should not be followed and should be overturned when there's that type of manifest injustice. And I have to agree that unfortunately we've seen too frequently courts, in my opinion, overturning precedent based on political instead of judicial decisions, which erodes the public confidence and is an extreme concern to me, because one of the major issues I think confronting the judiciary right now is the issue of it becoming so political. And so if I am given this opportunity to serve, I give my oath to everyone that I will not issue political decisions. I think we need to refrain, and we need to go back to what our founding fathers intended with 3 co-equal branches of government.
Judge Martin, or Attorney Martin?
Bob, I agree wholeheartedly with what has been said by the previous 2 candidates for the court. I believe that judges should faithfully apply precedent, and I think it gives predictability. So there's a benefit certainly to the litigants, to the attorneys. I think that it shows that the rule of law is being followed, and that is a bedrock of our government. And I think that it would be, as the other gentlemen have stated, I think that it would be very difficult to overturn precedent. We would really have to examine it on a case-by-case basis, and that we should be very slow to do that. When I was the parliamentarian at the Senate, I had to learn the Senate's precedent, and so I studied back the precedent dating back from the 1880s to the present, and I typed it all up and compiled it into a reference that I used so that I could advise the lieutenant governor when he was presiding over our Senate session on what our precedent was so that we could follow it. That's how much I respect our precedent, and I would do the same as the Commonwealth Court. Thank you.
And Judge Wolf?
Sure. Just to echo what Mr. Neft said, in North Carolina, there is a gerrymandering case that a Democratic majority Supreme Court of the state ruled one way, and then the next year the composition of the court became Republican, and they ruled a different way. And that's politicization of the court. We see that on the federal level for the Supreme Court as well. It's very troubling. It is not good that the wins of the court are dependent on which party puts the judges in office on the bench. So for me personally, I have a core set of values. I would be an elected judge. I would fulfill those values and look at the case on its merits only. And I don't believe that it is productive to be activist at all and change things for the sake of a political reason. You have to leave politics at the door when you become a judge.
All right, thank you. And Judge, since I've had you last a couple times, I think I should probably have you first this time. So the question is that judicial ethics are a hot topic in the news these days. Do you think our current ethical rules governing judges are sufficient? The current ethical rules in Pennsylvania that govern our judges are sufficient?
So I think that they are. The Supreme Court issues and adopts the judicial ethics. So that's something that can evolve as needed. We have a court of judicial discipline that is active, and we are policed. We are policed by our president judges. I know that our president judge watches what we do when we're sitting on the bench and may have a conversation or two. But for the most part, I think we have a lot of integrity in our judiciary. I'm confident in our judiciary. And I think that the judicial ethics at this time is sufficient to meet the task.
Thank you. Attorney Neft?
Thank you. I too agree. I think that our judicial ethics rules are satisfactory at this time. That doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement and the ability to be introspective about what those rules mean and how they might change over time. I think my greater concern is really with what we call the Judicial Conduct Board, which is the prosecutorial system that enforces the ethics rules. I think I've seen from time to time sort of an arbitrary enforcement against certain judges and then not against other judges in the Commonwealth. And I think that's really problematic. I think a prosecutor really needs, because the judges sit in such a unique position of authority, and judicial ethics need to be enforced uniformly across the board.
Thank you, Attorney Martin.
I think that our judicial ethics rules are sufficient, and I'm very pleased to say that today to those who are listening. However, I have traveled to all 67 counties as part of my campaign. And unfortunately, there is a perception out there that our judges are being partisan, that our judges are not following the law in making their decisions. And so I think that we cannot ignore that perception is out there, and that we need to restore the faith of the people of Pennsylvania in our judiciary and in our judges. And that is exactly why I am running for our Commonwealth Court.
Thank you. And Attorney Prince.
I also think our judicial canons are generally acceptable. I do think that we could maybe do more in relation to recusals and giving more specifics as to when judges should recuse. Right now, they're a little bit nebulous, and I know some of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court candidates did discuss those and situations based on donations and other things of where they believe that they should potentially recuse themselves. But given the fact that there isn't a lot of specificity there, I do think it would be a benefit to the judiciary as well as the bar for us to have more specificity in relation to recusal motions.
Thank you. Pardon? No, I think we did all four. Yeah. Okay. This can be a hard question, but I asked it earlier, but I thought I should ask you as well. Well, what do you think distinguishes you from the other candidates who are seeking to run in the November election? And I'll start with Attorney Prince.
Thank you. I'd say my experience. As I mentioned before, I've spent my entire career defending our civil rights in the state and federal courts, but looking specifically to the appellate courts here in Pennsylvania, I've litigated over 45 cases before our appellate courts and have litigated a number of issues of first impression, meaning first time the court ever had to decide those issues, and they've been decided in my favor. That means that the arguments I'm putting forth are grounded in the law and the Constitution. In relation to the Commonwealth Court specifically, just over the past 4 years, I've litigated 10 cases before it. Of those 10, already been successful in 8. Statistically, that's virtually unheard of for an attorney to have that type of success rate in front of an appellate court. But again, I attribute that to the fact that all I ever do is ask the court to uphold the law as written in the Constitution as intended. For the listeners that may be unaware, the Commonwealth Court is truly unique in the sense that it's the only court in the nation that acts both as a trial court and an appellate court, and is a court of direct government oversight. As the only attorney that's litigated in front of it as both as a trial court and an appellate court, I believe that uniquely qualifies me to sit on that court.
Thank you. Judge Wolf.
Sure. I think my judicial experience is something that's pretty obvious distinction between me and the other candidates. I've been a judge for 5 years and over 4 months. In the Philadelphia Municipal Court, in the civil division where I supervise the court, we hear maybe 20 trials a week. In the criminal division where I sit as well, we'll hear dozens of preliminary hearings a week when we're sitting in the criminal section. When we're conducting municipal trials, I've had hundreds of municipal trials. So I've presided over civil cases, I've presided over criminal cases, in addition to which I have 25 years of litigation experience, including intensive appellate work in all areas of the law. So I think that sets me apart from the other candidates.
Sure. Attorney Martin?
I have had a one-of-a-kind career of service that has given me truly unmatched, comprehensive, and one-of-a-kind experience in government law and process that I alone can bring to our Commonwealth Court. And this is so very important because, as Attorney Prince stated, the Commonwealth Court only hears government cases. Well, I know government. I have spent the last 3 decades learning the intricacies of our government. I'm the only attorney I know who has served in all 3 branches of our state government. I started out as a judicial law clerk, learning how to draft opinions and manage a caseload. I served in the administrations of 2 of our governors, where I learned the intricacies of our state government from the top down. I served as the parliamentarian at the state Senate. I also served as a litigator and a transactional lawyer for the United States Navy. At the Senate, I had a job that was very much like a judge. Every day I had to check my politics at the door and fairly and impartially and in a nonpartisan manner manage the legislative process for the Senate. To get and keep the job, I had to get elected by the senators, and I was unanimously elected 5 times, which shows a true testament to the fair and judicious way in which I carried out my duties.
Thank you. And Attorney Neft?
I would just like to note at the onset that I too have litigated in both Commonwealth Court's original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction. I think it was Judge Kunselman who kind of indicated earlier that to be a good judge, you should be a generalist. And I've had a wide variety of experience in a number of different areas during my 33 years of practice. If you look at the education decision that the Commonwealth Court just rendered on funding of education in the state system and rendering it unconstitutional, I think that case involved over 49 witnesses, testimony over 10 months, and 15,000 pages of testimony that ended up with an 800-page decision. And I have done sophisticated, complex litigation where I have dealt with hundreds of thousands of pages of documents and testimony and done extremely detailed factual analyses that are necessary to put that kind of an effort in the complex type of cases that the Commonwealth Court hears. And that's what I think distinguishes me from the other candidates. Thank you.
Earlier, you may have heard a question that I got in 2 or 3 different ways. So I'm going to paraphrase it. But the question went something like this: if you're successful in the primary election, you'll be running in the general election in November, and you'll likely, or perhaps, I say likely, it's likely that you'll need to raise money to run in a statewide election for the Commonwealth Court. So the question is, how do you insulate yourself from the lawyers or companies or anyone else that contributes to your campaign, and what kind of a recusal policy, if any, would you have? And I'll start this one with, well, I ended with you, Attorney Neft. Why don't I start with you?
Sure. So again, the rules, the judicial canons talk about recusal policy, but I think, there are rooms for ambiguity in that. And I think that we have to be proactive in dealing with recusal issues and taking it upon ourselves to look at the cases very carefully to see who's involved in them and where we would have a need for recusal. Again, you'd want the parties to, if we don't see it, we'd want the parties to be able to present that to us. But, the issue of money and funding of campaigns is an important one. Unfortunately, in this particular day and age, all we're left with is to raise money in order to be able to run our campaigns. And therefore, the issue of recusal as a result of funds that have been given is something that we have to deal with. And I already have a list of individuals and corporations that I think I would have to recuse from, during my life. And I would look to be adding to that based upon what happens in this campaign.
Thank you. Attorney Martin?
I also would have a recusal policy. I think it's important not only for there to be no improprieties, but also that there be no appearance of improprieties. And so I would have to review each of the relevant contributions on a case-by-case basis and make my determination, because I would want my litigant to appear before me to know that I'm being fair and impartial and that I am not being swayed by any contributions that were made to my campaign. I think it's really important that judges be faithful public servants who always act in the public's best interests, and we hold the public trust. And so we are held to an incredibly high standard. And that is what the public expects of us. It's what the public deserves and what we should give them.
Thank you. Judge Wolf?
So we're getting towards the end of the program, and I just want to keep it real. This race, this Commonwealth race, I'm familiar with Mr. Neft's financial disclosures. I'm familiar with my financial disclosures. It is a low contribution race compared to races previously. I know what the last winner of the Commonwealth race raised by this point in her race, and it was well in excess of what we're raising. I hope to have these issues to think about, but there haven't been many large donations in this race on the Democratic side. But if they come up, that's going to be almost a luxury to have to be worried about, because there haven't been large contributions to this race thus far. We'll see. There's about 6 days left. But the standard is, if there's a contribution that would bring into question the partiality of the judge, then they should consider recusal. And that would be the standard that is appropriate for all judges.
Okay. And Attorney Prince?
Thanks again. And as I said before, I would really welcome additional judicial canons addressing the recusals and the specificity there of when judges should recuse, so that it's an even playing field, so everyone knows exactly when judges should recuse based on contribution amounts and things of that nature. I will also say I heard one of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court candidates suggest that if a PAC donates to their campaign, that then they don't have to be so worried about recusing, because they don't know what individual contributed to that PAC that the PAC then contributed to the campaign. And I don't believe that to be appropriate. If you have a PAC contributing a large amount of money to your campaign, then clearly you should have to recuse yourself because that has the appearance of impropriety. So I would welcome additional guidance from our Supreme Court on recusal motions, and I think it would benefit the entirety of the judiciary.
Okay, thank you. So we're coming to the end, as Judge Wolf pointed out, and I think our citizens, our voters, they like to know a little bit about you as people, as individuals. So the next question is, what do you do when you're not working? What are your extracurricular activities? So let me start with Attorney Prince.
Well, thank you. On our Instagram page and Facebook page, Prince for Justice, we have a lot of my day-to-day activities. I love going to the gym. I love working out. That's my stress relief. I also love learning new things, everything and anything. I've done everything from installing a central air conditioning unit in a house to doing my own electrical, working on cars. I just love learning new things. And that's what I also love about the law, because the case law is constantly evolving and you constantly are learning those different new things. But getting back to me personally, also love animals very much. And we have 2 dogs, Rocky and Zelda. They've been out on the campaign trail with us already. Also am a huge foodie, have posted a lot of photos of different foods that we've prepared and eaten. So yeah, we love just letting people see who we are as people. I think it's important for the voters to know not just who you are as a candidate, but who you are as a person. So I hope I can earn your vote.
Judge Wolf?
So a lot of my spare time, I spend a lot of time in the military. So I'll be at Fort Indian Town Gap in about 3 weeks for 2 weeks training. I have to stay. I'm 55 years old. I have to stay in a good physical shape as the 18-year-olds. In my 20s, I had a 6-minute mile. In my 40s, I had a 7-minute mile, and now I'm about 8 to 9-minute mile. I'm trying to keep up with them, so I do run a lot. Try to stay fit. I also like to know people who have boats, so that I can be on their boat and not have to pay for it. But I'm a good sailor. Anyway, I just want to add, thank you for having this program, because voter outreach, where we don't have to spend money, is really important. And this gives us the opportunity to speak to people. And I just want to express my appreciation to you for having this program.
Thank you. Attorney Neft?
Well, first I should say I'm going to have to check out Attorney Prince's Instagram page and see what he's cooking these days. Nonetheless, one of the things that I really like to do too is work out, and I actually engage in Tough Mudder competitions over the summer that I've really enjoyed over time. One of the things a lot of people know about me is I've been a real advocate in the Bar Association. I've used a lot of my free time for that, raising money for hunger relief on our program called Attorneys Against Hunger in Allegheny County. And I've also been a staunch advocate for disenfranchised members of our Bar Association to make sure that we have a more diverse and inclusive Bar Association. And I've worked really, really hard for access to justice, making sure that people who need legal services but can't afford it get the help they need. And I've done that by representing people pro bono in a number of different types of matters, by developing pro bono clinics, and by my work on the IOLTA board that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court appointed me to. So those are things that are of great interest to me. But thank you so much for having me here today.
All right, and thank you. And Attorney Martin, I may be giving you the last word here.
Thank you kindly, Bob. Family, family, family. I love my family. I have a wonderful husband, and we have 3 children, and we have an adorable pony-sized 2-year-old Bernie Doodle, who's part of our family as well. His name is Holden. And I really devote as much time as I possibly can to my family. I've had long hours with all of my jobs in my career, as I'm sure all the other candidates have as well. So I really cherish my time with my family. I come from a large family. I'm the 5th of 6 children in a large Irish-Italian family. And my mother just loved being a mom, and she really passed that on to me. So anytime I can spend with my children, I always volunteered at their schools. I was always the classroom mom. And I cherish all that time that I can have with my family. I also like to run. I like to walk. I used to be a figure skater many moons ago. So if I ever get the opportunity to ice skate, I jump at that as well. And I want to thank you, Bob, for having me tonight. This was really a wonderful opportunity. And I sure would like to earn the vote of the folks listening out there tonight. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank all of you. You've all been terrific. You're all wonderful candidates. I wish you could all win. That's just not the way it's set up, because you're really, really terrific. And I enjoyed my time with you. I'm going to turn this back over to Debbie, who's the Executive Director of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. And at that point, so I'll say goodbye and turn it over to Debbie. And again, thank you, all of you. You were terrific.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you all. So I want to thank those who attended, right? It's an hour-and-a-half program. We all know that on Zoom, people's attention is 45 minutes, so we have doubled that. So hopefully we've kept people's attention because of our quick questioning and answers. So I also want to thank the candidates for keeping things moving. And everybody have a great night. www.pmconline.org has information about the candidates, We'll have this program on our website as well. And thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right. And go Sixers, right?
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Right. Bye now.